really
think
love it.
when I was younger, when I was like 14, 15, if you asked me what I wanted to be, I probably would have said be a journalist.
Journalist.
I did law. I was a lawyer for 11 years.
Yes.
Only be peace when certain Arab parents love their own children more than they hate ours.
I'm 45.
So it's
Yeah.
25
And this is
years
my
ago.
birthday today.
It's your birthday?
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah,
Question.
it's a
What do
great
you
question,
think?
but that's a question that the politicians will need to answer for you, because I can't. I'm not going to share my opinion on camera, but
The badge is my
you're a
student
So you're
badge.
so
Yeah.
you're
I'm a journalist student
Journalist student.
at MMU.
amazing.
Yeah, Manchester Metropolitan
Enjoying it?
University. You know what? To be honest, yes, I love it. Why not?
Really?
Yeah, I
Because
really
I think
love it.
when I was younger, when I was like 14, 15, if you asked me what I wanted to be, I probably would have said be a journalist.
Journalist, why?
I want to be a sports journalist, I think, because I like sport obsessed, and it just seems a good way of watching a lot of sports and
Loads
getting
of
paid for it. But yeah,
So what did you study?
I did law. I was a lawyer for 11 years.
Yes, I read that on the
Yeah.
biography. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So it was written. Yeah.
As a lawyer.
So how come Mark Levy became the CEO of the Jewish Representative Council? How that happened?
So I took a job with the Jewish Leadership Council, who are my employers to this day, who are the umbrella body for the 38 main Jewish communal organisations. An amazing organisation. They do an incredible amount of work for Jewish people and organisations across the UK. And my chair for the Jewish Representative Council of Greater Manchester took over as chair and wanted me to become the chief executive. He did a whole strategic review of the Jewish Representative Council of Greater Manchester. If you've looked at the website, no doubt you'll have seen Mark Adelstone's name. And it said that the organisation, to become more involved and actually work better both with internal and external stakeholders, it needed to have a chief executive to run the organisation. So Mark, who I've known for a very long time, approached me and asked me to consider taking the role, and I was delighted to do so. So now I split my time doing two roles, so working for the Jewish Leadership Council and for the Jewish Representative Council of Greater Manchester. So with the Jewish Leadership Council, I'm one of the external affairs managers. So that does a lot of interface work between our members and members of Parliament and leaders of local authorities. So it's a real good, varied mix of work.
Very good, very good. So you're happy with your job?
I'm very happy with my job. I love my job.
Okay, so you're saying if you didn't become the CEO, you would become the journalist, sport journalist.
Well, after university, I was a lawyer. I had a good career as a lawyer for 11 years, and ultimately I decided to move to work for the Jewish Leadership Council, just someone who has always been passionate about my community and my faith, and it's a good opportunity to work in a world where I am able to do something positive about something I care so deeply about.
Okay, fantastic. Mark, let me just put this question like that to you. Why we don't see the amount of Jewish people in the society?
Why don't we see more Jewish people around the society?
Around the society, why they don't mix with the people inside? For example, as a student at MMU, I never seen Jewish students.
It's a really good question. I think the Jewish community as a whole, we integrate very well with society, whilst maintaining our own traditions and beliefs. But the answer to your question is very simple. There's just not that many Jewish people here in the UK.
How many Jewish people?
Well, how many do you think? How many Jewish people do you say there are in the UK?
Let's say 10,000.
In the UK? No, in the whole UK there's 270,000.
270,000. Okay.
In the whole UK. So
okay. What about Manchester?
In Manchester there's probably around 30,000.
30,000.
So, but we're so heavily centralised in very few places. So for religious reasons, the Jewish community primarily live in Salford and Bury. Mm-hmm. There's a smaller community in Manchester and thriving communities in Trafford and Stockport as well. But, Manchester universities as well, they don't have as many Jewish students as other universities like Birmingham and Leeds and Nottingham tend to have like big Jewish societies. But there's just not that many Jewish people in the UK, so it's perfectly feasible. So I don't know whether you've actually ever met a Jewish person before.
Never.
You never met
And
a
this
Jewish
is my
person
first time. And this is my first interview with you. And you know that I'm Iranian.
Yes. When were you born in Iran?
I was born in Iran, yes, and then at 20 years old, I moved to
Right,
England.
wow.
Yeah, 2000. That was 1990, end of 1999 when I moved here.
Right.
So, you know the Iranian situation
I do,
in Iran,
yes.
so because of the government. So this is the taboo. So to be honest, I'm breaking the taboo now. You know what I mean? So this is my first interview with a Jewish person as an Iranian.
That's interesting. That's
Yeah,
fascinating.
that is yeah. So I never have problem with the Jewish.
No, so,
And I don't think the
so
Jewish people-
where did you live in Iran?
Tehran. I'm
Yes.
coming from capital.
So did you know Jewish people in Tehran? Because obviously there is a community there.
No.
You didn't know
To
that?
be honest, no, because I was so young. You see, I was 20 at the
Yeah.
time. So when I, moved to here, but before that, never faced with Jewish,
Yeah.
and because of the the atmosphere and the situation. So obviously, we're not allowed even to travel to Israel. But I love to travel to Israel. I love to interview Israeli
Yeah.
people, and this is my first, and this is my honor. Could
Because
eventually
his-
interview a Jewish person.
I mean, historically, there's a
Historically.
thriving Jewish community in Iran under the Shah. It was a
Yes.
real safe haven for Jewish people. And then
Yes.
things changed when the Shah was deposed.
Of course, yeah,
in
1979.
1979.
Yes, unfortunately.
Um,
And then this regime, Islamic Republic, came up.
Yeah, and, it's
Unfortunately.
difficult.
What do you think about the Iranian government?
Well, the Iranian government and their support for some pretty malign actors around the world, it's fairly common knowledge, isn't it, that they are responsible for funding and financing terrorist organisations across the globe who have some dubious views towards Jewish people and Israel. I think that's uncontroversial to say that. Obviously, the Iranian Revolutionary Guard, in our view, need to be a prescribed terrorist organisation. It's obviously we're speaking at a time when there's war going on in Israel and Gaza, and Hamas, who are the people who perpetrated the despicable acts on the 7th of October, financed and funded by the Iranian regime, as are Hezbollah, who are also fighting on the northern border. There's conflict between Israel and Lebanon as well. So they're a malign actor who are doing a tremendous amount to destabilise the world during this time that we speak.
So my question is, so how come West allowed Iranian regime to carry on for 45 years? Why? And still allowing them, and still trading with them, still supporting them in terms of financially. So why?
I'm not sure about how are they supporting them financially.
So obviously, they recognized Islamic Republic, 1979, and still they're recognizing them. So they're giving them place, position everywhere in the world. So how come they not trying to remove them as they removed Shah of Iran?
What the Western world removed the Shah?
Yes.
Did they? I don't know. So you know the history better than me.
So what do you think? What do you think about why Shah? Why Shah gone? Why? So how come the Shah removed?
Well, I thought there was an insurrection against him internally, and he was deposed. Is that not what happened?
Not deposed. So obviously, because of the situation, what happened in Iran, with Khomeini. So he was imported in France. He was provoking people against Shah. And
okay.
he had the support of the France and Western. That the France gave place to Khomeini.
Okay.
So
I didn't.
You don't know
I
history,
don't know
yeah.
the
So
history
obviously,
around it. I know about the kind of contemporary politics around it.
Yeah, I know.
And it's,
But unfortunately, 1979, the Islamic Republic regime came to power, and then afterwards, the proxy militia group, took place by Iranian regime, and in these 45 years. So, never things happen against it, So you say in Israel and Hamas, okay, so Israel now trying to wipe out Hamas. So with wiping out Hamas, do you think everything going to be solved for Israel?
It's interesting because I was watching a film about Golda Meir, the Israeli Prime Minister,
Yes.
the other day, and after the Yom Kippur War in 1973, 6 years later, Israel and Egypt signed a peace treaty in
Yes.
1979.
Yes.
So my sincere hope about how this
Are you talking about Camp David?
No, it might have been signed at Camp David, but it was between Sadat and the Israelis. So,
Yes,
So,
yes.
So my sincere hope is that Israel does manage to decimate Hamas, that there's a more moderate force comes into being in Gaza and the West Bank. And with international backing, that can create a vacuum where these kind of moderate voices will prevail, and we can start having a conversation around how we can look to have a Palestinian state living side by side alongside a safe and secure Israel, because a two-state solution is still really the only game in town, isn't it, to try and resolve what can only be described as a long-standing and retractable foreign policy issue.
Let's go for on 7th of October when Hamas attacked Israel. What do you think about that? How that happened? You don't think Bibi, Benjamin Netanyahu, did need this war happen because of the internal issues he's facing at the moment?
No, I mean that's just an awful conspiracy theory, and it needs to be completely debunked. I mean, there will be a frank inquiry, and rightly so, how thousands of terrorists were able to breach what is meant to be a secure border fence and massacre innocent people in their homes, going about their daily business.
So how come they breached the security?
I'm not a military expert, I'm not a military strategist, I don't know, but like I say, there will have to be an investigation that will have to answer all of those questions. It's I don't know anyone who's given me an answer as to how it's happened yet, but people need to find out how it's happened. And obviously the upshot of that, the failings in security, is that it was the worst massacre of Jewish people, a pogrom, the Prime Minister rightly called it, the worst massacre of Jewish people since the Holocaust, and it's incredibly painful to even think about it. And on top of that, we've still got over 130 hostages who are currently being held in Gaza, whose families are waiting for their return.
They're still not freed.
Sorry?
They're still not freed.
No, waiting for their return, yeah.
So what do you say about the extension of the war? Is it legal? Do you think the extension of the war is resulting the releasing of the hostage at the end, or there is no need of the extension of the war? Because at the moment, as you know, that more than 30,000 Palestinians are killed by Israel. What do you think about that?
It's a tragedy when innocent people are killed on any side.
But this is the result of the war.
Yeah.
But Netanyahu is still insisting on extension, and you see that he wants to attack Rafah, and just gave deadline to Hamas. If they not free the hostages, it's going to be happen. Do you?
It's very painful.
Agree with that?
Well, it's not down to me to agree with that, because I'm a British Jew. I'm not Israeli.
I know. But what is your opinion?
My opinion. Well, I mean, it's difficult. I've got me. I'm not going to share my opinion on camera, but I just want to state very clearly that it's an absolute tragedy when innocent people are killed. It's very, very difficult. You're not a human being if your heart doesn't break when you see some of the images coming out from Gaza, and I expect it should be the same when you see the footage of what was perpetrated on the 7th of October in Israeli towns and villages along the Gaza border. When you're fighting an enemy who embed themselves within the civilian infrastructure, when you've got command centres underneath hospitals and hide behind women and children, it's a tragic inevitability of war, and it is a war that there's going to be civilian casualties. I know for a fact that the Israelis don't go out to murder civilians. They don't. They're trying to hit military targets. And these are heavily embedded in areas where there were women and children, and like I say, schools. I mean, I know, having read testimony, people going into, like soldiers going into homes, every single home has weapons in these homes. Why have civilian homes got weapons in them? Why have schools got weapons in them? UNRWA, the United Nations organisation that's meant to help support what's a very difficult situation in Gaza. They've had several of their employees were caught committing terrorist attacks on the 7th of October. How's that been allowed to happen? How have the UNRWA depots been used to store rockets and ammunition and weapons
against Israel, or against Jews?
Well, it's against Israel. I mean, look, there's plenty of people who live in Israel who aren't Jews. You've got to remember, 20% of the population are, Israeli Arabs who aren't Jewish people, who live in peace and harmony. So it's not just against Jews; it's against Israelis.
And do you know how many Iranians live in Israel?
Well, I would imagine quite a lot, because obviously, like I say, the Iranian Jewish community was thriving once upon a time. So
Apartheid, yes.
so when life became very difficult, I imagine a lot of them moved to Israel. So
Of course.
so
yes.
I mean, I know Iranian people who live in Greater Manchester who are Jewish.
Oh yes, yes.
So it's,
yes.
you know, so it's a tragedy, because obviously people talk about you know, the 1948 in Israel and the displacement of people who were living there, but there were the same number of Jewish people who were displaced from Arab lands. So around, you know, historic communities just wiped out overnight in Syria and Egypt, and you know, at the same time it's very, you know, Libya, all these places where there were historic Jewish communities going back centuries.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
As you know that before the war happened, before the Hamas attack, Israel was getting close to the peace agreement with Saudi Arabia,
But,
and then all of a sudden, all this happened. You don't think that was the plan of Islamic Republic of Iran to prevent this peace agreement?
I have read that. I mean, because obviously the Abraham Accords, which you will have read about, which has created normalisation between Israel and several countries around the world, which
Yes.
were kind of historic peace agreements,
Yes.
which we need to support.
Who's that happened with?
So the, you know, United
President
Arab
Trump.
Emirates, yeah, with President Trump had brokered it with, you know, the UAE, and you know, we look at Dubai now, and it's got a, you know, Jewish community in places like Abu Dhabi and Dubai. It's incredible, you know, kosher restaurants and synagogues, and you know, living peacefully. It's a really beautiful thing. And I've read that there were the normalisation between Israel and Saudi Arabia was nearing its conclusion. So obviously the party that would be most concerned about that would be the Iranian
Regime.
the Iranian
Yes.
regime.
So, so do you think without wiping out Iranian regime, any kind of peace agreement happening or any kind of stability happening for Israel? So let's say, okay, Hamas is going to be wiped out. So what about Hezbollah? What about Yemeni Houthis? What about the other militias created by Iran? What about them? You don't think it needs to be the head of snake to be cut?
I mean, obviously, I'm chief executive of a local Jewish community.
I don't know about you in
organisation.
politics, innit? So
I'm not,
you're following the politics.
Yeah,
you're following the
I'm
news.
following the politics. I am
As a
following the
Jew,
news.
so obviously you
I mean, look, the
concerns
Iranian.
you.
I do believe the Iranian regime is very dangerous, as I've stated already. Whether there needs to be some sort of sanctions against them to limit the ability that they have to.
Can I hold you here? You're talking about the sanction. Sanctions going on for 45 years now. So what happened with the sanction?
Well,
apart
I
from
think they were- what
apart from the
Jason-
people suffering from the sanction because of, you know, the financially, what brought to the world? What brought to Israel? What brought to the peace, around the global peace? Is it happening now? Any positiveness out of sanction?
Well, I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, because there's a further complication around their kind of nuclear ambitions, which again needs to be halted. So I mean, as I've said just now, my hope of what the upshot of what happens in Gaza is that the vacuum that is created by Hamas being defeated will lead to some moderate voices being established with the help of the international community that could theoretically lead to some sort of peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians, because the Israelis want to live in peace. I mean, they've signed peace treaties with Jordan and with Egypt. You know, their behaviour proves over the years that they're happy to sign peace treaties with other nations. And there's a very famous quote I read the other day from Golda Meir, who was Prime Minister, who said there can only be peace when certain Arab parents love their own children more than they hate ours. And I thought that was very powerful.
Guess what? That never happens.
But why not?
Because of the Iranian regime ideology.
So you feel very hostile towards the current Iranian regime, don't you?
Of course.
You feel very...
Yes, because the
Are your parents still there? Do you have family?
yes, the parents there, yes.
Really?
Parents there, friends there, family there,
So
okay,
are
everyone.
you, are
but
you
they
not-
are living in the cage.
I mean, are you not concerned by this being filmed that it might have a detrimental effect on them?
I never go back to Iran anymore.
No, but you're...
But the
you're-
family.
if this comes out and someone puts two and two together and figures out that your parents are
No,
still there.
nothing gonna happen with the parents. Nothing
Okay.
gonna happen with them. No. But that if something supposed to happen, is the person is me. You know what I mean? But it's not gonna happen to me
So
because
how
I'm not
did,
gonna
how
go back
did
to
you
Iran.
manage to escape the cage, as you call it?
So obviously, obviously everyone escaping. It's not a matter of migration. It's what I'm saying. Iranian never migrate.
Yes.
They're all escaping out of the
Yes.
cage. So that happened to me as well. So 20 years old.
Fascinating.
Yes, of course.
And
So
how old are you now? Sorry.
I'm 45.
So 25
And this is
years
my
ago.
birthday today.
It's your birthday.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. This is good coincidence, isn't it? My birthday
Yeah.
with the interview with you.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry you got to spend your birthday interviewing.
No, it's alright, it's honor. It's honor. It's totally pleasure for me. Thank you very much for accepting that interview. And you are a very wise person to me. And the reason Iranian escaping that's because of that ideology. The Iranian wants to live in the peace. This is the message I want to give you as an Iranian to the Jew person. We love you.
Okay.
We love everywhere.
I know it's
We love
interesting.
everyone.
So it's interesting when we had marches against anti-Semitism recently. There were quite a few like Iranian flags.
Unfortunately, yes. So obviously,
No, marches for the Jewish community.
For the Jews.
So basically, Iranian people like who say, look, the Iranian people on the street love the Jews.
Of course, for Jews, not
For
against
Jews.
them.
No,
Yeah, obviously.
No,
yeah.
no, that's what I mean. So,
Yeah, definitely.
I organised one in Manchester, and a couple of people with Iranian flags,
Yes.
and and Kurdish people were there.
Oh
and
yeah,
lots of-
but Iranian. When you're talking about Iranian, because you mentioned Iranian flag, I thought you're talking about Islamic people. But Iranian flag, that Iranian flag is not our flag. You know that. Iranian flag, we are proud of. That's the Shah
yeah, the Shah.
flag. You know what I mean? Which never used anymore.
So do you
after that.
believe that because I saw recently there was an event in London with the son of the Shah.
Yes, Reza.
Yeah,
Reza Pahlavi.
Yeah, so do you
Yes.
think he has like the birthright to take over in Iran? Is that something you believe?
But what I do believe is, the kingdom never go back to Iran. Never happen anymore. You know what I mean? But as he says, so obviously he wants to continue, dad's legacy. But never happened. I think that never happened. And what we after is the democracy. What is democracy? It's the ballot.
I mean, it's hard to watch when you see in Iran the protests, the way they get suppressed and the way people are killed and protesters are killed and dealt with. It's really difficult to see, isn't it?
Yes, of course. You remember last year the Mahsa Amini killing?
Yeah.
The girl killed. You see, and what happened around the world? But unfortunately, it didn't get anywhere. And my question is why West
Yeah.
not supporting Iranians enough to topple the Iranian regime?
So have you spoken to MPs about this?
I'm gonna, I ask Miss Reina, and obviously she emailed back to me, not her, obviously from her office. I said, okay, we decline your offer because she's busy. Obviously, I can understand. She's a deputy Labour, so obviously, so she doesn't have time. But my, as a future journalist, so obviously I'm a student now, but as a future journalist, I would like, to know the MP's opinion on this, the Israel-Palestine, Iranian regime, mostly Iranian regime, because as both of us know, and everyone knows, once Iranian regime is on power, stability and peace never gonna happen for Israel. You know that. I know that. Everyone knows that.
So
Okay.
when you were younger in Iran,
Iran, yes.
so were you brainwashed and fed propaganda about
Of
Jews
course.
in Israel
Of
continuously,
course.
all the way
Yes,
through
continuous,
school?
Yes, it didn't have any kind of effect on me
So
as a
why
person.
didn't it affect you?
Probably because I'm so curious.
Yeah, you're curious.
So curious.
Person.
So I've always been, you know
Yeah.
what I mean? But some people are so naive. They easily brainwashed by what government says, you know what I mean? And we can see that now in Iran. You see, if you go to Iran, talk to the people, most of them, probably not most of them, probably amount of percentage say, okay, Jews not good.
And what sort of life do your parents have there? Do they have a good life?
To be honest, they have a good life. They're retired, so obviously they got business, they got houses. You know what I mean? Rented out. You know what I mean? They're just collecting money monthly. In that term, obviously financially, but life is not all about money. You know what I mean? So if you're okay with money, so you're having a good life. No, it's not about that. You know what I mean? So you live in the cage. So obviously you're seen by the government. You know what I mean? You're on the surveillance of the government. So that's not the case. You see, so you can't. The youth have no future in Iran. Do you know what I mean? And that's why they escape. You see, so.
Fascinating.
That is what I'm saying. You see, so they create the cage for Iranians. They create the cage for the people around the world. They created the militia group against Israel, against the power, against superpowers, and they are collaborating with Russia and China to defeat West. So why West letting or allowing Iranian regime to progress, to dictate its legacy or the ideology to the world? Why? This is my question.
Yeah, it's a
What do
great
you
question,
think?
but that's a question that the politicians will need to answer for you, because I can't. I agree with you that the
Yeah, but you don't think
Iranian
it's all about money because Iran is rich and they just get what they want out of Iranian
don't
regime?
know. I just don't know. I mean, that's a question you need to be asking the Foreign Office and people who have the influence to make decisions, who can change legislation and change policy towards combating a pretty difficult and malign situation which you describe for young people who live there. And I mean, I presume you agree with me that their tentacles all around the world are very dangerous. And
of course, they're dangerous in the world.
And obviously you've seen this military action now going on between the Americans and the British and what's going on in Yemen. So we'll see.
What are Yemenis Houthis?
The Houthis, yeah.
They are backed with the Iranian regime. You know what I mean?
Exactly. So it's all a bit of a proxy war at the minute, isn't it?
Yes.
Because no one's bombing Tehran, but they've got the issue between Hamas, you've got Hezbollah, you've got the Houthis.
Yes.
So it's all kind of a proxy war
Yes.
where they're trying to take on all their tentacles around the world.
Okay.
And hopefully damage their influence in a kind of secondary roundabout way, I guess, is the thought process. But you need to speak to politicians about it.
As a last question,
Yes.
what is the solution to stop this war between Palestine and Israel for good?
Well, the obvious solution is that the terrorist organisations need to lay down their arms. Israel has a long history of making peace treaties, like I said, with Egypt, and with Jordan and the Abraham Accords. So if the terrorists who are currently fighting Israel lay down their arms and approach Israel and say, we want peace with you, then there wouldn't be no objection. You've got to remember that Israel completely disengaged from the Gaza Strip in 2005.
2005, yes.
Your knowledge is excellent. In 2005. And what was left? They had all the agriculture was left, beautiful homes overlooking the Mediterranean Sea, and they were told by the international community, you know, look at this beautiful piece of land. What will happen is there will be a Palestinian state will be created, you know, an oasis by the Mediterranean Sea. And what was left? They had an Iranian proxy terrorist organisation who obsessed with killing Jews. Let's be honest, they've said very openly they'd love to repeat the 7th of October again. So until the mindset of these people changes and they aren't in control of this strip of land, I mean, you've never been, you said, but it's astonishing how close it is. You can't believe how close the Gaza border is to like these Israeli towns, to Sderot and other places who were decimated by these terrorists on the 7th of October. It's like within walking distance, really. It really is. They're walking across the border to murder Jews. So the first step has to be the terrorists have to be defeated and they have to lay down their arms. There has to then be some sort of political process to embolden and build up moderate voices in these places to look at what can be done to help craft a two-state solution where you have a safe and secure Israel alongside a viable Palestinian state. But that can only happen when the Palestinian terrorists, when they lay down their arms. And also the Palestinian Authority needs to be revamped, it needs to be changed. Currently how many years, 20 years into a 4-year term? Been no elections there. You've got Mahmoud Abbas there, who's been there forever. Who are the partners for peace? I mean, I'm asking you, who can Israelis make peace with in Hezbollah, in Hamas?
I don't see any. I don't see it because they backed up with the Iranian regime. So obviously, once they backed up by regime, so the mindset. This is a matter of mindset. And you know, that's the only difference is for Israeli government, they its own people's life important, but for the Hamas, it's not important.
Do you think the Israeli people want their children to be going to the army at 18? Of course they don't. Of course they don't. Do you think they want their children to be in Gaza at the minute? Of course not. You know, 236 soldiers have lost their lives. I mean, you have to remember as well that it's the equivalent of 12,000 British people were murdered on the 7th of October. 1,200 Israelis were murdered. It's equivalent to 12,000 British people. If 12,000 British people were murdered, what would you expect your government to do? You'd be demanding that you go after the people who were responsible for the atrocities.
Yes, but what is a matter of until when?
I know. I know.
It's a matter of time.
Well, until yeah. And
Until you kill everyone?
no, I mean, look.
Do
of
you know
course
what I
not.
mean?
Until Hamas are not in a position to be able to.
Hopefully, but that's another question. Is it going to be happened? Hamas going to be wiped out?
Well, it's very difficult. It's
This is
impossible
very
to wipe
difficult.
out an ideology.
But
It's
what
an
about
ideology.
mindset? Yeah.
It's an ideology. Of
course,
which is
the
what you've
ideology
said
is never
all
going to
along.
be wiped
It's
out.
not.
Yeah. Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Mark Levy.
Thank you very much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
So we're gonna have about 4 or 5 pictures together. Is that okay?
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Negi sir.